Hi and welcome to this new tutorial in our series about extending Pano2VR with JavaScript. My name is Thomas Bredenfeld, and in this tutorial, it's the number 5 of our series, I want to show how to build up an image gallery for a hotspot in Pano2VR. I have set up a demo panorama with such hotspots implemented so you can see what we want to achieve in this tutorial. You have some hotspots on the walls. This is a very old church in the Swiss Alps, and there are some wall paintings, some murals, and we may like to have some close-ups and maybe some explanations, and that's what I want to do with this gallery hotspot we have here. This is a title, some paradise scenes here in the corner of the wall, and if I click on it I get a pop-up and one image you can see with a caption, a title, and you can move it by swiping or by clicking on the arrows, and it goes round and round and restarts at the beginning, and it's a pop-up which is filled by data attached to this hotspot. You see this little text box, it's for our information during the development process, and if I click on a hotspot you see some data popping up here. These are some Pano2VR skin variables, and they are transferred to a JavaScript engine building up the gallery. It is much more efficient than doing it with Pano2VR. There is a possibility you can build up image galleries in Pano2VR as you treat all single image here as a node, and you have a lot of flat nodes and then just click to the next node, and so on. But it is a complete separate Pano2VR project, and it is a little bit tedious and cumbersome, and maybe it's not really ideal, especially if you have a lot of hotspots with their own galleries. So we have one here with some images. We have single images, only one at a hotspot, so the gallery can do both. And we have here another hotspot showing the exterior of the church from the outside, and these are multi-image hotspots and these are single image hotspots. There's another one here, and all these are flat close-ups of the murals you can see here. Especially here you see the image upright, where it is here you see it from the wrong direction, so you can make your users see the images as you like it, and especially it is free from perspective here and really flat and easy to read. In this tutorial I want to walk you through the whole process of setting up this gallery and connecting it to the hotspots, and how the data is coming from the hotspots to the gallery, and how all this process is working. Before we start, let's have a look on how the project is set up basically, and have a rough look how it's made. The basic approach we have here is, I'm opening just the project, so let's have a look here. This is a panorama, and I prepared the project so far that I have introduced some hotspots with some titles where I want to have all this stuff visible. And the general technique I'm using here is to introduce an image list consisting of file names and descriptions, captions, in the description field of the hotspot. And if I click on a hotspot, the title will be pushed into a variable and the description will be pushed into a variable. And then I'm triggering an external JavaScript function, reading all these values, assembling useful data for the image gallery itself, building up the gallery, throwing the gallery into a pop-up, and then showing the pop-up. These are the main steps we need to achieve to get this stuff running here. So here we have the click, and the click throws the title into my variable gallery title and gallery content, and here you see a text string. It's pretty simple to write. It is a file name, then we have a hash, and then we have a line break, and the next line is the next image, and so on. So you can enter one line or more lines, can use it with one image or with more images. And this data we have in the two variables, gallery title, gallery content, will be thrown into JavaScript and then processed. And the pop-up then is basically an empty text box. And I'm using jQuery, we already had it in other tutorials, as a main convenience tool and helper tool to manage JavaScript stuff. And in the end, we are throwing all the stuff into an empty text box we have shown here from the skin. That's all. Sounds easy, isn't that much complicated, and it is much more elegant than using other techniques. And here it's really worthwhile to use a JavaScript gallery. It is a very compact approach, and you can even throw this stuff into a component and reuse it as often as you want. Having an image gallery on a website or in a project like this is a very frequent requirement for web projects. And so we have a lot of image galleries you can build with JavaScript, pre-built modules and libraries. And it can be a little effort to search the web for the appropriate gallery. There are some very popular ones, and I have selected for example one which is pretty easy to explain. They are very similar to each other, and I'm using lightGallery. And it is a project you see available for several frameworks which are used for website front ends. And for me, it has a nice approach. Usually you have two main approaches how to build up a gallery. The first one is you build kind of an HTML list and then convert this list to a gallery. And the other way around, it is the way lightGallery can work. You have a gallery object, and this gallery object is provided with some external data, and then builds the image gallery and the display of the single images on demand. And let's have a look at some demos, how that is looking like, what this gallery is able to do. And you see we have a lot of features, and we only need a very little fraction of what this library is able to do. And you can click on an image and you can swipe it from left to right. You can use the arrows, you can download it, you have a zoom function if you like, and can close it here, and you have the possibility to have thumbnails. So you can extend our example, what we are doing here in our tutorial, with much more features just by adding some plugins or add-ons or whatever you like. I'm having a very basic feature set for our example here, and we use this gallery as one example of various ways you can choose if you want to have an image gallery to be implemented into projects of Pano2VR. This is lightGallery, and I'm showing in the next clips how to implement it into a project in our file structure and how to make it working with our content coming from the Pano2VR hotspots. After this short introduction, let's get our hands dirty and start with setting up the project. For this purpose, I'm opening up our Visual Studio Code editor. It is empty now and waiting for our input. I usually throw the project folder, it's a work project here, just into the window, and it opens a folder with all containing files. The project is organized here. This is the same what we see here. And now let's add some stuff. We can do it here or here, it doesn't matter. And usually for extending Pano2VR projects with JavaScript, we need an extra folder. I usually call it lib for library and add it to the project folder itself. We have here the gallery folder with our image files. The folder htdocs is the folder where I output all my stuff. I'm renaming it from output to htdocs because it's a pretty popular name on web servers for just the folder to be played out to the public on a web hosting server. And we need this gallery folder to be moved on to the output, and the library folder, we will manage this later in the Pano2VR editor, and these two folders are necessary for our project. And if we head over to Visual Studio Code, we can see familiar stuff. There's the index file here in the htdocs folder, the skin, and we have the Pano2VR player here, and the tour XML, which describes all the hotspots and so on. You see the titles already here, and so on. I'm closing the htdocs folder. The lib folder is empty, and here we have the images, and here we have our panorama images. So we can close this here, and the main stuff we're talking about is happening here in this library folder. After setting up the basic file structure of our project in Visual Studio Code or in the Finder or on Windows on the Explorer, we now need to get these lightGallery files or a selection of them for implementing it into our project. So you don't find a download button here, even if you go to the home page, but there is a little icon here with this cat. This is the same as view on GitHub. GitHub is a so-called repository, and a repository is a collaboration platform where several people can work on the same project, and it has controls about who is doing what, or development branches and other stuff, which is making possible to larger projects and working several persons on it to work collaboratively on this. And it's at the same time, it is a place where you can download all these files you need. And for this download, usually we have this code button, and if you click on it, you get a little pop-up, and at the last line you see download zip. I'm doing it, and I have my downloads folder. And don't be afraid of the 68 megabytes. We only need a fraction of what is offered here. And I am heading over to my project folder in the Finder or Explorer, and usually I'm setting up for stuff like this. A little folder, it's usually named Z downloads. The Z is prefix for making it stand at the very end and getting out of my way. And I have the downloaded zip file here, and now I'm going to unpack it, and let's have a look at what it's inside. It's the same what you see here, and all this stuff what is listed here is mainly meant for development and for implementation in some more complicated projects. And usually a GitHub project has a fixed structure, and there is one folder, it is named source, src, and this is where the stuff is developed. And another folder, which is the most important for us, is the folder dist. It stands for distribution, and distribution is everything what really goes out to the public and can be used in projects directly. We don't need everything of it, and I'm going to prepare some stuff here. I'm going to my lib folder in the project, adding a new folder and name it lightGallery. So it's my first preparation. That's where all the files will land I need really for this project. And when I'm going to distribution, I need the CSS folder. I need the fonts folder, as the lightGallery brings its own fonts. I need the image folder, and I need the min file. There are two other versions for other project purposes. We need only this one, and the plugins folder is for some additional features we don't need here. So I copy this and head over to my library folder, lightGallery, and paste it here. So now we have everything in place what we need. It is recommended to use GitHub projects in the same structure they are offered here in the code folder, as they are often hardwired, and if you move or rename some folders here, it will break the project. So it is useful to use all you need and omit stuff you don't need, but you will get error messages telling you what's going wrong if you make some errors here. But this works. Of course, everything is tested. And now this is my part for the lightGallery and how to sort it out, what we have really necessary here in our project folder. The next step in our project setup is very short and very easy. We need jQuery as a general helper for all kinds of JavaScript stuff. And so let's grab it and integrate it here into our library folder. And I'm going to jQuery, and you have download here. And you can directly right mouse click, save link as, and just throw it into the downloads folder and add it to our folder here. And it is ready to use, no unzipping or something like that. So jQuery is now living in our library folder, and it makes life easier. Nearly all projects I'm doing need jQuery. It's much more convenient and much more tidy to use it instead of writing longer JavaScript commands or some tedious routines to find elements in a web project. So jQuery is nearly every time a must-have part of the project. Integrating external files into a Pano2VR project always requires 3 steps. The first step we have done so far is to download the files and to organize it and to sort it into our library folder. The next part we need to do is to make it available in the Pano2VR output for the runtime when we have it running on the web server. So we need to copy all the stuff into the htdocs folder. So we head over to the Pano2VR project, click on the output section and scroll all the way down to the section advanced and assets. So now we add 2 folders. The first folder is our gallery folder, as we need the images to be copied into our output folder as well. And the next one is the library folder to have all this functional stuff in here, the lightGallery, jQuery, and we add 2 more files later where all our own stuff is living in. So now we have these 2 folders implemented here. I save it, and we have the htdocs, and if we output all the stuff we added here, we should now see here an assets folder, and inside of the assets there's a gallery and the copy of our lib folder with jQuery and the lightGallery files. So now the library files are linked to the output, and all the time I'm doing an update here and re-export the project. All updates are exported as well. After having set up the file structure in the last chapter, we now need to wire up the external files with our project using the skin. And for this purpose I'm opening the skin editor with the attached skin. The skin is completely empty. There's nothing in, no variables, no nothing. And we set up a first element we need. It is a code element. Just throwing it, usually I'm putting it into the upper left corner and name it code block. And now we need to connect the external files to make them available for the skin and for JavaScript. Currently we only have them copied to the output. This is just a file copying. The project knows nothing about it, so this is the moment we need to change this. In the code element you have the section external files. It is pretty much the same as we have here. The only difference is if I'm adding the external files to an element, this element can be made to be a component, and these connections will stay alive, and this external file is connected to the skin and this is connected to the element, which has some significant advantages for us. Now let's connect all these files we have. First, we start with the CSS files. I'm hitting the plus sign, and the first CSS file we need is the CSS file from the lightGallery. So let's head over to our project and check the path. We have our library here. In this is the folder lightGallery, and there we have a CSS file, and we need to pick one of them. And we also need to keep in mind that we are living in the output of the htdocs folder. This is what is important when the project is running in the web browser. So we have assets, library, lightGallery, and now we need some of these CSS files to be linked in here. For my convenience, I have prepared this for copying, and this is what we need. I will explain the path. So we are living in the assets folder in the output, and we have the library, lightGallery, CSS. This is a subfolder. I make the window a little bit smaller so we can see the Explorer view in VS Code. And now we have CSS, lightGallery, and we need the bundle min CSS. There is everything we need for our gallery bundled in there. And the next file we need is a new one we need to create, and let's do it in Visual Studio Code. So head over, just collapse the htdocs folder, because you need to be aware that you don't make any changes here in the htdocs folder, because it will be overwritten every time I export the project. This is the original folder. There is where the music plays. And in the lib folder, I'm creating a new file. It will named custom.css. This is my CSS file. We need it only for some minor tweakings. So, and now we can just copy this path, add a new CSS file, and just skip all this stuff, and we need only lib and custom CSS. This custom CSS file is empty, and we will add some code later, but we need to prepare it here. And the next step is to integrate the JavaScript files we need. So let's switch it from CSS to JavaScript, and I'm copying the jQuery file. Nearly always it needs to be the first file to be loaded, because other files are relying on it. The order we are introducing this file in this table is important. So the next one is also a JavaScript file, and now comes the lightGallery file. By the way, we can do it another way. I have prepared it in my cheat sheet here, but you can do it another way. If you go to library, libgallery, and copy a relative path in VS Studio Code and paste it in here, it is nearly what we need to have. We only need to add assets, and because the path is relative to the project folder, which is here, and you only need to add the assets folder, which is reflecting the place, the path in the output. And now comes a special one. We also need to create a file in the library, and this file will be named custom.js, and this is where we are doing our main coding work. And this file will not be linked here, but we do it here. Technically it is nearly the same, but if I'm adding it here, I'm checking from file, and now I choose work progress library custom.js, open it here, And now it's linked to the project, and the skin editor is watching this file. I can edit externally with Visual Studio Code, and we can check this for a moment. Let's just enter a comment here, custom.js, and so, and add a comment, save it, and you see the comment is popping up here. You can open this, but you cannot edit it. It is blocked for editing here, and the editing is happening here. And what's very nice is if you go in the Pano2VR skin editor, you go to View, and you have a menu entry here, Live Update on Save Only. If it's unchecked, then every change you make here in this file externally will be monitored by the skin editor, and it fires a reload command to the browser. You have seen the panorama was flashing for a short moment. Or just make a minor change here. I just copy it. You see it's unsaved. Now save it and look here. Now it's reloaded. And this is pretty nice for working with external JavaScript files in the skin editor, that it is watched by the skin editor and you don't need to re-export or save something. It is done automatically, and you can work directly with the browser, with the output in the browser and the code editor side by side. So just here, make a change, save it, and you have a reload here. So now we have all files we need, and we make a short check in the next clip whether everything is present. After having wired our external JavaScript and CSS files to the skin, now let's check if everything is working. And I'm heading over to the browser and hitting F12 to go to the network tab, and we have now go to reload everything and check what is being loaded. We have the index.html, we have our Pano2VR player, skin.js, and we have the lightGallery CSS, custom CSS, the jQuery file, and the lightGallery JavaScript. If you miss the custom.js we entered here, it is part of the skin. All the code which is written here in the custom.js, and if I'm going back to the skin editor, everything what's in here is part of skin.js. As skin.js is already a JavaScript file, all the code we are entering here will just integrate it into skin.js. So it is no separate file anymore, but let's say it will be imported into skin.js and not as an external file later linked here. So the JavaScript file we are working on is not to be found here. It is part of the skin editor, so you can't see it in the browser being loaded because it's part of skin.js. So everything is okay now, and we can start to work on our skin. The first component we need is our pop-up for the image gallery to shorten up a little bit our work here, to concentrate more on JavaScript coding. I prefabricated some components for our project here, and if I'm going to my component library, I have my folder Pano2VR tutorials, and I have prepared a gallery container. I will integrate it in our project and walk through everything what's important for us and describe its functionality. It's not very complicated, it's pretty easy stuff, and I will just walk through the elements. We have a general container just for keeping everything together. It's 100% by 100% container. He does nothing special. He's always there. And inside of this container, we have the gallery inner container. And you see here some variable inner text fields. So let's first click in the outside of the stage area and look to the variables section. As components can bring their own variables, I have done so. And so we have three variables important for us. Gallery show is a variable which controls the visibility of the pop-up, and it is changed by the closing icon. It is changed by the tint. And we have two variables for the content. The content variable is responsible for keeping our hotspot description. What we later will enter here is transferred to the variable gallery content, and the other is the variable title, where we have the hotspot title thrown in to be displayed, and we have it in a text box here. This is the part gallery title. The text is just this variable, and we have a gallery box. Here you won't find a variable because this box is filled by JavaScript, and the gallery close button is setting the variable show to false, and the gallery tint is setting the variable show to false. And we have two variables. In this case, closing the gallery will delete or enter nothing into the variable here and here, so it is just a reset. So we have no content in the variables left if the pop-up is closed. That is pretty much everything what we need here, and prefabricating such a component is pretty easy. It can be a blueprint for other pop-ups, putting some input here or bringing some variables controlling the content and putting one variable controlling the visibility. It's pretty straightforward here, so I packed this in the component to have a short way to have my element here to play with. So let's save it and re-output it, and of course you see the show variable defaults to false, so you won't see the pop-up, but we can make default it to true. Save it, and it should show the pop-up here. So you have it, and you should close it with a click in the tint. So basically it's working. The standard value needs to be false. Of course, the pop-up is invisible when we start our project in the web browser. The next thing we need to do is to take care of our hotspots in the project. If I'm going here to the outputted project, you'll see the default red dot hotspots, which are defined in the hotspot section of the output with just the basic settings here. They aren't really changeable. It is just to mark up that they are here. And now we need an hotspot template being connected to these hotspots in the panorama. And now let's check this. Going to the skin editor, and of course I have prepared a component for it as well. It's pretty easy, but I'm taking it here. It's a hotspot gallery. It's already perfectly named for it. And add a component to skin, and now I have this hotspot living here, and let's check what it's doing. I have added no actions so far because these actions will be added later. And we have a tooltip which shows the hotspot title, and I have a little icon for it representing a gallery. And now I'm copying the template name, close it, and go to the main program. I'm usually, for controlling hotspots or for editing hotspots, I'm using the list, because a double click throws this hotspot into the center of the screen, and you can either copy your hotspot template name here, or let's head over to the next one. You can also choose it, hotspot gallery. It's an URL hotspot, and so you can do it this way, or you can add it this way, just to make sure that all these hotspots are now connected to our hotspot template. Let's save it, and now we have everything here what we need. and they have their own tooltips, and now we have it as we like it. So they are doing nothing if I click on it, but that's not intended so far. Now let's work on the hotspot actions to connect it to the pop-up. And so we head over to the skin editor and manipulate our hotspot gallery template, which has no action so far. And the first action will be making the panorama pop-up visible. It's the easiest one, so go to gallery show, set it to true, and let's check this. So we go here, and now it should open up the gallery pop-up, and we can click on the close button, and we can click on the tint behind. All this will close the pop-up. The next one, and still pretty easy, let's add the always a mouse click and set variable value, set gallery title, and now we are entering the placeholder of the hotspot title, which is HS, and HS is thrown into the gallery title, and as we have in our gallery container the title already this variable entered here, that should work. Let's have some thoughts about the order of actions. It is useful to make an element which has changeable content to be shown after everything before is done. So show should be the last one to get this done here. So now if we go to the gallery, we see our hotspot title here at the header of the pop-up. That's everything we want to have here. The interesting part is, of course, the hotspot description. This will be set up later. And so we have our basics pop-up functions in the skin are working. And we have it done so far here to integrate these two components, the hotspot gallery component and the hotspot gallery container, together in our skin and working with each other, connected by the three variables we have here with the content, the title, and the show variable. The code block is so far completely separated from it, but we will bring it to life in one of the next clips. So I save it, and we have should have a reload here. Sometimes we don't have, and just check it again. Everything is working as intended so far. In this section number 4 of our tutorial, let's come to the very core of our project and construct the processes in JavaScript to connect external images with our gallery and set up the control from the hotspots to the gallery and how the data is processed to show the images in the gallery. The first step we need is, let's open one hotspot here, to add some image data we want to show, and for this I'm using the description field, given I'm not using it for something else. Another possibility not covered here is to use custom properties for it. As it is simple text, you can also add it into a custom property in case you need the description for something else, maybe for a tooltip or something like that. So here I'm collecting my image data. I want to have to open the pop-up gallery when I click on this hotspot. Let's have a short look in our file structure and how the gallery is organized. It is pretty simple, as we only have a flat structure inside of this folder, and it is only consisting of file names. So we need some information beyond that. And I have prepared a data set for some of these hotspots. Let's start with this one, the paradise scenes. I'm simply copy pasted here I don't want to be boring with typing endless text. Copy, and I have this content here, and let's open it up a little bit wider so we can see how this content is structured. First, on the left side of every line you see the file names you want to have to show up for this gallery invoked by this hotspot, and this is reflecting the file names you see here, or some of them. And we have 5 images to show here, and we want to have a caption in our gallery, so a descriptive line what is being shown on this image, and this is a pair of data, file name and description. And to make this data processable, you need some separators to make these items processable by a JavaScript, and usually you find some characters you won't use inside of the file names or inside of some descriptive text. You can use other characters, the pipes, a vertical line is one of them, or even combinations of characters. It doesn't need to be one only, can be more characters like XYZ or something like that. And then we have the text, and the other separator we need is just a line break. So every new line is a new data set, and the hash is separating the file name from the description, and the line break is separating each data set from another. So when we have this, we have our data provided here, and we can paste in some others here. So whereas St. George is here, copy, paste, and so on. I will fill in the rest after this clip, so we start with the full data sets in the next clip. So now we have provided a data source and learned a little bit about convenient separating of several data sets, and inside of these data sets, for this case, we have a file name and caption for this image. You can even add more of them with other separators. The advantage is you can design this pretty freely. So this is a setup of our data source we need for the different image pop-up galleries in this project. So after I have filled in all remaining information about the image galleries here in the hotspot description box, we can check if everything is complete by using the list view and double click on the first hotspot. There is information here, and so you can quickly check everything being in place what you want, and this looks pretty okay. And now let's get our hands on this data from the skin editor and using the hotspot for it. So let's check the hotspot, the HD gallery hotspot template, and of course you guess it, we need a mouse click for it, and this mouse click should set a variable value. As it is the first one, it is also the right one, and now we need the value. Of course it is a dollar sign, and it is the HD for the hotspot description now. So we can test it. We had already a reload in the background, but of course you cannot see anything because this variable isn't displayed anywhere. And let's add a little helper for it to make our hotspot output visible in our project. And I'm just entering small text field here, and let's call it debug box, and this box I'm putting it to the lower left corner. I'm making it auto size, add a little bit padding, and make the background a little bit transparent, let's say 220. And now let's add some text here, and let's say content. And I'm using these boxes very often to have some content which isn't visible, to monitor it or to check it whether it's working and so on. And let's add the title to title, and let's add the variable, use a variable title. And now we should see the data the hotspot is pushing into this variable. Save it. And now we should see this box here. And now we get the data here. This is the title, this is the content. Because it doesn't look very nice, so let's make it left and top. And now we see everything we want. So the data is transferred from the hotspot description to our gallery content variable. These little debugging boxes are very helpful. I have some of them in my component library, but you can easily create it from the scratch. It is very fast and easily done. And now we have the data in a variable where we want it. So as we now have done all preparations in our skin editor and in the Pano2VR project file itself, let's head over to our JavaScript again and let's check what's next. So first, open custom JS. It's we remember it is connected with skin editor's code block and the code element, and it is this one here connected to the file, and every update I do will be reflected in a reload. And so we can head over here to start constructing our JavaScript. So first, let's check a little bit whether it's working at all. The JavaScript, now we can only see the command line, and we see it here in the skin editor, but we cannot see whether it's doing something in the browser. And for this, we usually enter a little function. You remember we added jQuery to our project, and the jQuery functions usually start with a $, and we have the document. You can just enter it here. We have suggestions. Visual Studio Code knows what the $sign means, as he sees, we have jQuery in our project, so the $sign is known to me, and I get some suggestions from the inner engine of Visual Studio Code to complete my lines or make suggestions how it's going on. When the document is ready, it's connected with a dot, it's an event, and this event is happening when the whole document, so the Pano2VR index, HTML, and all the other data is loaded, and the document is valid and stable and readily constructed. Then jQuery fires this ready event, and after an event we usually open a bracket, and then comes a function, and this function can have arguments in brackets, but it can also have an empty bracket, and then it is followed by 2 curly brackets, and usually you enter an empty line here, close it with a semicolon, and what should happen when this function is active is positioned here, and let's have console.log. Let's have an output in the development console of our browser, and let's say doc ready. And at the end, let's have a semicolon, save it, and now we should see something in our browser. Let's head over to the browser. You see we got a reload, and now I'm hitting F12 to have the development tools at hand. And we go to the console, and you see doc ready. We have some output here, and this output allows us to monitor stuff happening inside of this JavaScript, especially when it comes to development and you need to get information about the last step you have done. We are going now to establish our first connection between the skin and JavaScript, and first of it we need to have a function, and this function needs to have a name, and let's call get gallery data, and just type it the right way, gallery data, and we need some curly brackets, and we need to check our function console.log, and this function will be called by our hotspot. So let's reflect this gallery clicked, and this should be confirm the function we now add to the skin. I'm copying this function name, copy, and now let's head over to the skin editor and add this to our gallery hotspot. Mouse click, and JavaScript calls from the skin from within the Pano2VR project need to be called with go to URL, and I'm opening up the box, type in JavaScript colon, and just add the T here, and now paste in the function an empty bracket for it, so the function call is complete, and add this to the hotspot. Usually we need to have this function at a certain place, and it is the third position. First, as we need to get the content of the variable gallery content, we now need to rearrange it a little bit, and the gallery show action should be the last one. These both should be first, because this function needs the gallery content variable already populated. So this is the right order. Get the title, throw it in here. Get the description of the hotspot, throw it into the variable, and now call the JavaScript processing it. When it's finished, show it. That is everything what we need to add here to make this function live. And in the next clip we will test this. After having reordered all the actions in a senseful manner, we now need to check what's happening when we click on a hotspot. Now when we are in the browser, let's reload this, and now we get an error. What's happening here? Of course, I knew this before. What's happening here? We get an error message, uncode reference error, and this means I'm calling something which is either wrong or missing or has other issues. And here we get told get gallery data is not defined. But that cannot be, as we have when I head over to the Visual Studio Code, get gallery data. Let's check whether there's a typo, but I usually copy paste it to avoid typos here. Get gallery data is defined, but I get this error message. So what's the reason for this? I need to explain it a little bit. This custom.js file is connected to the skin editor. Let's head over to Pano2VR and in the code block, and the code is integrated into skin.js. jQuery, for example, is loaded as an external file. It is valid for the whole project, and this one is not loaded. It is not an external file. It is just for our development now. It is an external file, but the code we are producing are part of skin.js. And this is a nice little difference which causes this issue. As the code is living in a code element, and this code element is part of the skin, then we need to remember the skin is an object. We have two main objects in Pano2VR. The first one is a Pano object containing all the panoramas, the data for tours and what is in the hotspots and how the parameters are and the tour map and so on. So every structural data are living in the Pano object, Pano dot, and the other object building up the skin is skin dot. So you can really find this stuff and in the console or in the source code. And what we need to do is to think about how objects are arranged inside of such a project. And if I have a script which is living inside of the skin object, and I have other JavaScript files, let's say jQuery, they are living in the whole project and they are a child, so to say. They are a child of the window object, of the main object. So the window object is everything I see here, which is reachable under this very URL. And Pano is a sub-object of window, and skin is a sub-object of the window as well. And if I define something inside of a skin object, it is only valid inside of the skin object. So when I call a function which lives outside of this, then I get this error, and this is called scope. A function or a variable can have a scope, and it is an area where it's valid, and outside of this area it is unknown. So we need to introduce a little trick for it, and so we need to make our function getGalleryData not a child of the skin object, but a child of the window. And it doesn't make many troubles because we just need to define it a little bit in another way. So let's have window. And you already remember the dot in JavaScript is always a parent-child relation, something like that. Something is on the right side of the dot is attached to something on the left side. And here we have the window object, and this window object needs to have a function for our purpose. And now we have a simple equal sign function. And now this function is attached to the window, and it is defined not as a child of the skin object, but as a child of the window object. And if everything is done right now, let's save it. We get a reload automatically as the skin editor is monitoring this file as it is part, the code is part of the skin object. And now Gallery HS is clicked. That's what we want to have here. So now we have a function call which is going out of the skin up to the window object and is doing some stuff there. This is very important because from the window object we need some information from the Pano object. And the Pano object and the skin object are two different parts of the show, and they need to communicate to each other. And the scope issues you can run in here are pretty hard to find if you don't know what is a scope and what all this stuff is about. So now we have a good way to define functions which are valid outside of the skin object. It's a very important move here. After correcting this little scope error, we are now ready to fill this function with life and to get a grip on the data we need for the gallery. So let's enter some empty lines here, and now I'm making a comment. Get data from Pano2VR. I'm adding a comment here. Mind scope issues here. And now we want to have the data which we can see here in our content variable to live here in JavaScript. And for this, let's introduce a variable. I call it gallery content, and just correct some typos. And this variable should contain the content of this skin variable. This is a JavaScript variable, and we now want to populate it with the skin variable content. So for this, we have a procedure in the JavaScript API of Pano2VR. As a Pano object we need now. Sometimes the suggestions are a little bit annoying. So I'm starting with an underscore at a point and now delete it. And we have the Pano object. We have a short look in the Pano2VR JavaScript API, and let's have a look for variable. So if we enter it right, we will find something. At the first line, you get what you need, get variable value, copy, and this is what we need here. And now we need the name of this variable. Of course, it is gallery, GAL, content. So, and let's add a semicolon here, and now let's throw this into the console, copy, and this is the next one, and we have our variable gallery content. Just start typing here. It is not annoying here. It is great to have all the variables defined above at hand. And now we should see after a hotspot click. So I lost my output here. I'm heading to Pano2VR, save it for an output and go to output and re-enter it here. I have 12. We should see it now. Here it is. And now you see the output with the hash separated file name, description or caption and so on. And we have a new line. It is reflected in the console as well. And now we have our gallery content skin variable thrown into the gallery content JavaScript variable, and now we can process it in a way we need for building up the gallery. So what we have here in our variable is technically a string. It is just a chain of characters, and it isn't structured in any way, but we need it structured in a way. We have an item consisting of two sub-items. One item is one image, and the sub-item is a file name, and the other sub-item is a description. And now we need build up such an object, and we make a container, and we have an array. Build an array, and an array is a chain of objects or parts of objects or items in a general sense. And so let's call it a gallery array, and this gallery array will be made from this gallery content. And you can split up a string and make an array from it. So these lines will be interpreted as items. And for this, there is a very handy JavaScript function, a copy gallery content, and we have a function which is called split. And split defines a character or a sequence of characters by which a string will be separated to make separate items to fill up an array. So let's check this here, and we need a little bit more explanations for it, because we first want to separate our content, you see it here, by lines. A new line can be a different character in different systems, and there are also combinations between so-called line feeds and returns, and we need to catch all of them. For this we need a little excursus to how to check an element against a several combination of characters. I'm doing it first by copy-paste, and then I will explain it with the help of a very nice tool for you. And the split sequence we need here looks pretty cryptic to anyone who is not familiar with this stuff. I copy-paste it because you need to be very careful by writing it, because every single character here has a meaning. And what is this? Let's go to a little helper. And this helper is called regex. And this is also the name we need here, regex. It is a short casual abbreviation of the word regular expression. It's a pretty abstract description of something we have here. insert your regular expression here, and you see here it starts with a slash, it ends with a slash, and there we have some options at the end. And here we have a G at the end, and here's a GM. So let's check this. I'm copying this part between the slashes and enter it here. And this is our regular expression, and you get an explanation here. First alternative matches carriage return and matches line feed, new lines. These are different signs on different systems. It means make a new line. And now let's check it against our real world content here. And I'm going to my output here, click on it and just copy this. And now let's work this expression against our content. And here you see we have 4 matches of a line feed in our project here. All the blue sections here, you see the little sign here. We have 4 matches of either a line feed or a carriage return, and the question mark and the pipes are, this is an OR sign. It may be a single line feed, it may be a single return, or it may be a combination of them. And you see here the further explanations, and this is extremely powerful, and regular expressions are very widespread in all programming languages. You get this. And this simple thing here is separating my string I'm getting from the gallery content variable of the skin into separate items. And of course we want to see now what is it looking like, what we get now. Copy, and let's have the gallery array displayed in our developer box. Save it, and now head over to the project in the browser, and let's close it, and let's hit a button, and that's what we get now. Here we have a simple string, just a chain of lines, and now we have an array with 3 elements. Element 0 always starts counting with 0, 1 and 2, and it is a little bit more structured, and you see it's colored here, and the white output is always a simple string, and everything what's colored is something like an object, an array, or something else, or a function. And so it's our first step. We have now processed our data in a way we can programmatically handle it. And now let's close it here or clear it, and we now should get 3 elements, and here we get 5 elements, and if we click here, should be here, we get 1 element. It is only the element, if you unfold it, it is only element 0, only 1. And they have an element length as an additional parameter you can check. And so this is the process to build meaningful data structures just from strings you can enter in Pano2VR just into a description box here and make something senseful of it. Because here we can only add text, but this text can be prepared to be developed in a meaningful data structure we need for our gallery later. Converting our string from the hotspot description to an array of separate images for our gallery, we had done our first strip. So we have a string, now we have an array, and inside of this array we have 1 line describing 1 image including the caption. What we need next to take this 1 step further to convert this string, which is a string, a third of what we have here, and this string should be divided into 2 separate items, the file name and the caption. And we introduced the hash sign as a marker to separate these both from each other, and now we are doing pretty much the same as we did in our first step with taking a string and splitting it by a sign or selection or combination of signs. And that is the next step. We now need to split up image lines. or image items. Let's make the wording a little bit more precise. So, and for this we need a function, because now we have an array. An array has items. In this case here, when we click on this hotspots, the gallery has 3-item array. And we need to cycle through these arrays between 1 or 5 in our project. We don't know, but we need to get all of them. And for this we have a function. And this function is provided by jQuery. You can write it in JavaScript as well, but in jQuery it is more elegant. This function means $each, and it's providing a cycling through an array or an object which consists of several items and doing something on every item. So of course we need to know what, and this is a gallery for each gallery. And then we need to do something on them, and usually we have a function, and this function has an argument, or it can have 2 arguments, and the function consists also on a curly bracket consisting the stuff we want to do with it. And here in the function I'm usually using a key and a value. And the key is, in our case, the key is a number 0, 1, 2, and the value is a string coming afterwards. So let's first make it a little bit more understandable. Let's check console log, and let's check our both parts here. And what is the key? And now let's separate it by some sign, plus, and now we have a string, and I'm just doing a dash to separate both of them. Value, so just type it right and save it. And now we should get something like this. So let's click on it, and now we have a 0. Let's unfold the array itself. Now we have strings. It is a string because it is connected by a plus sign and a dash, so everything in here converts automatically to a string. This is due to the pretty relaxed handling JavaScript has when it comes to strings and numbers and so on. If only a single element of such a concatenation is a string, and this is a string, everything else will turn into a string too. It is usually a number. You see, it is written in blue, it is a number, and the pink one is a string. And if I add a string and a number, the number becomes a string, so this is a string. But it's just for testing here now. We want to have a look at what is happening if we cycle through an array. And that's pretty much what we need here. And now we need to grab every line and separate the file name from the caption string. If we have a look at this line, when we split up the whole gallery content string we get from the hotspot description by a certain sign or by a certain character or combination of characters, and we have a look at our value here, which is in fact this part of our output here, then we need to do nothing else than to split again, and now have a simple split sign as it is a hash here. So now let's create a variable like let's call it item for the moment, and this item is simply the value we get here. This is a string, this one, the whole string from here to here, and this is value, and this value can also be treated with a split function. And now we need, of course, you get a separator here, and the string split separator string regular expression. You see the technical explanation we had already done here. Now we use a string as a separator, not a regular expression as we did it here. So now we need some single quotes and just enter the hash here, and we want to know what we get out of it, of course. Console dot log, and we want to have the item. Semicolon at the end of the line, and now let's save it. We get a reload, and now let's click, remove it here, and let's click add a button, and now we get an array with two elements. First we have the file name, and second we have the caption. The position of the file name is 0, and the position of the description, the caption, is 1. So, and now we have what we want. And now let's have a container or something we can put all this together. And for this, I'm going to the top of my script, usually before the function works or starts to work, and I'm introducing a new array, and it will collect all images in a structure the gallery later needs exactly as it needs. And now let's go images, all images, and it will be an empty array. You see it, an empty array is just, an array is always made inside of square brackets. And here it is, collect all image data. And now let's add everything we get from this into such an array. And of course I have in mind how the gallery library, the lightGallery, needs this stuff. So I know it already, but I will prepare it accordingly. And other galleries may need some other data formats, but I know it now and I'm setting it up appropriately. So to get an element here, we need to throw it into this all images. And all images is an array, and an array has a function built in, and this function is called push. And push is a method, a function, which can add something to an array at the end. So, and array push can have elements like items, or we can add all these items in here, but we do it a little bit different, and we generate an object here. An object is something else. So let's have an object which is consisting not of square brackets, but it is consisting of curly brackets like this. And inside of this object we have also keys and values, but they are working a little bit different as in an array, because we don't have numbers, but we can have keys here. And one of these keys is source. This is the way the image galleries wants to have it later. And the source will contain the first position of this item. You see, the first position of an item is 0, and it will be the file name. And so let's add it here. This is item. And now we need a square bracket, as it is the index of this item array. So that is the first element here. Sorry, there's no semicolon, it needs a comma because they are added with commas. You see it here. An array is one item, comma, next item, is the same is valid for objects. And the other object name, and please mind, this isn't written in single quotes, but it is just written as it is because it is a key of an object. And the next one is called sub HTML. It is only a capital H, and this is, you guess it, item 1. And this object will be, as a unit, as an object, will be pushed into all images. And this is what we want to see later. And now let's have this all images visible for us in our browser console. Console.log. And now we want to see how these all images is looking like. And I'm doing it because our lightGallery expects an array of objects. And this is what we build up here. And now let's have a first check how this is working. Just moving it away here. Click, and now we get an array of objects. And this is what we need here. And you see the first images is an object consisting of the source and the sub HTML, which is the key the lightGallery expects for the caption of an image. And this is specific to this library. Other gallery libraries, there are a lot of them on the market, may expect it a little bit different or have some other construction ways or methods. This one is pretty handy here. And so the object is pretty much self-explaining. And now we have this array is pretty much what the lightGallery later wants. If we have a closer look at what we are getting here, you may notice that there is something containing in our objects here what may cause issues later. And it is this space at the end of the file name, and you see also spaces at the beginning of the caption. This is only due to the setup we did here. We have some strings and we need, of course, a separate sign here. Okay, we can remove the spaces here, but it is better readable if we do it this way. And there's a handy function to sanitize it here. And we only need to add some functions to this both strings. In item 0, we need to strip off the space, and in item 1, we need to strip the space at the beginning, and there's a handy JavaScript function for it. And if we use a jQuery, we have just $.trim for it. And this is containing the string we want to sanitize in brackets, and we do the same for the next one. And we have a bracket here. And now if we save it, wait for the reload and just enter a mouse click here, and we'll have a look at our array here. We see everything is clean now. We have no spaces at the end and at the beginning. And there's another thing we want to check here is we have only the file name here, but we want to integrate the complete path to this file name as the gallery expects it from us. So let's have a short look at our output of Pano2VR. And I unfold the HD folder, and I have the assets folder, and inside of the assets folder I have the gallery folder. And if I'm looking from index.html, which is our output file, I have an assets folder and I have a gallery folder, and inside of this gallery folder are living all the images I need. So let's do the following, and I'm going to the head of my script. Also, as a preparation, I'm using a new variable, and this variable is image path, and this is predefined, and I say it is assets, as we have seen it here, and /gallery, and an trailing slash at the end. And now we just can add image path in front of our source item here. It is item 0, and we just put it in front, paste it, concatenate it with a plus sign, and now let's check what we get here. And clicking on a hotspot will get this one. And here's the assets gallery, and we have a complete file path, and we have our caption. And so our data object now is ready, and we can start up to build the gallery in the next part. At the end of this step, I have cleaned up a little bit here and moved some code lines to another position, so the console log The output is only once called at the end of the build-up routine here, so we see this array at the end with the 8 images here. And we now have some comments for this routine. It's a bit abstract here, and I had some comments here: split the image items and then add an image to collection, referring to this all images array here at the top, and the push action. And here we are building the complete image path, and we remove every spaces. So you see here it is a trim function we have for cleaning up. Let's type it this way: build a complete image path and remove spaces. And now we have our array of image objects containing the file names and the captions. We can now just continue inside of this gallery data function, and we can just continue to write here. But I'm going a little bit another way, and I'm structuring such processes more or less along what they are doing, and where are some breaks in the process where you can make a section. And the first part is getting gallery data, preparing it for the image gallery, and instead of continuing with building the image gallery, I'm entering a new function with only the build process itself to make some more or less structured, well-contained function blocks, which are much more easier to understand and which you can continuously let work one after another. So one function does its job, and at the end it calls the next function, and so on. So you have a chain of processes. It's easier to understand, it's more tidy, and this is what I'm doing now in the next clip. Now let's build the gallery in a separate function block. I'm making some empty lines here, and now I'm setting up the function, and let's name it build gallery. And what we now want, this gallery will not be built with nothing, but this function gets an argument, and this argument will be all images. As this is the data the gallery is built from. And now let's make empty curly brackets, so we have a basic function container here. And usually, as I said, I'm working with such function blocks, doing one process from beginning to end, and then comes the next one. So they are running consecutively, and this is the usual procedure for me when I'm doing JavaScript programming this way. If the data is ready at the end, then I'm adding the function call here, build gallery, and I'm saying it's all images, and this is the argument, so the gallery knows with what data to build it. And this function call just continues the whole process in the next function. And as you might notice now, here we have a normal function build gallery, a pretty straightforward JavaScript function block with starting with word function and then the name of the function and some arguments if necessary or if desired. And we don't need the window.galleries data function, because this function is called by the function above, and this isn't directly called by the skin. So I don't need this window.construction here to guarantee that the scope is okay. And now let's add some console.log and some remark. Let's add build gallery invoked, and this is just for us to see in the browser dev console where we are now. And let's save it, and now let's check it. And if I'm clicking on one hotspot, at the end of everything should stand build gallery invoked. That's what we want. Now we can continue here with our other stuff, and we need some prerequisites before we can start. The gallery we are using here, the lightGallery, wants to know two things from us. First, what images should I show and where should I show it? And so we need the position in the whole document where the gallery should be built up. And I'm calling it gallery container. And this container is already known to us. And it is a jQuery object we need here. And it is a $sign and some curved brackets. And we now need the selector. It is called a selector. That means where do I find the object where I want to throw my gallery data in. For this we need to head over to the skin editor, and we open the skin editor, and now we go into the gallery box, and what we now need is the inline gallery container. This is the div where the content of the gallery is thrown in. So I copy it. It is an ID, so this will be written with a hash in front of it and following by the object. Now we have the JavaScript objects of our content box here. We can right click it here and go to inspect, and we see this box here. If I make a little bit more place, you see the gallery box here, and here's the gallery inline container. It is an empty div, and this will be filled with our gallery code. So we need this information up front here before we can do anything else. And now we get to the next section before we can really build up the gallery. The first prerequisite is already here, and the next part will cover the settings of the gallery. So when it comes to build up our gallery, we can just add a gallery object and throw in our data, but it is only a default setup. And as we are using the lightGallery here in a way which is not default, usually the gallery is built up from an HTML code, but we want to generate the object by JavaScript and adding the data by JavaScript, so nothing is really default here. And we need a settings object for our gallery, and I just add a comment here, target div for gallery, to have it set here. And now let's create settings object. And this object will show us the different parameters where we can set up the gallery and do some tweakings to the functions of the gallery. And what I sometimes do, especially for development, I'm copying the URL of these settings here so I can easily look after it or check some features or some parameters. And I have bookmarked it here. So gallery, and here is the documentation, lightGallery.js.com docs settings. And here you see how it works. Here is the object. That is exactly what we had here with our gallery container. Pretty much the same what we have here. It is just done by vanilla JavaScript. And we have some speed, mode, and so on, other settings. And it is put at the end of the gallery. And we have, for this settings, we have an object here, and this object will be created now. I have set up it before, and what I'm doing here most of the time, sometimes I'm kicking it out afterwards when it's ready, so I have something to look after it. And the nice thing with Visual Studio Code is if you have such a link in the command line here, you see now it's popping up, follow link, command click. And if you command click here, the link is active and you can easily recap some stuff from the documentation page. Just a handy trick for development. And I'm usually doing it this way. So let's have a settings object. Let settings and the settings object is a JavaScript object. It consists of curly brackets, and now let's add some parameters here. You can find a lot of stuff here what you can do, and you see it's really a lot, and you can scroll through it and even change what we are doing here to your liking afterwards. So now let's paste in some stuff. I won't only make a short walkthrough through the data. I have added some commands, and I just will put the first part here in by copy paste, and you see some remarks here I made already. There's a parameter, it's called dynamic. If it's true, the images are not made from some HTML structure in an existing web page. It is not possible here because we have a completely JavaScript generated website here. Pano2VR is nothing else. And you can close it from the skin, you can close it from somewhere else, append sub HTML2, so it is an item where to place a caption. You are not allowed to download the images. You have sometimes a counter here, 1/12 means first image of 12 total. I don't want it here. I have a height in 100%. I can loop through the images. I can use the mouse wheel to scroll to the images, and the transition speed between the images is 200 milliseconds, so 0.2 seconds. And these are the most parameters. It is a selection of what you can see on the settings page here in the documentation. And the two most important things, and this is the second part. I just copy it here, but it's pretty self-explanatory after I've told what I've told before. And here we have the container. This is a target. Where should the gallery be shown? And this is a gallery container we defined here. This is exactly the part here, the black part in our skin text box. And the other one is all images. That is what we have transferred here by the parameter, and which comes from our function we defined before. So now everything is prepared. Just eliminate this typo here, and I'm saving it, and this is a ready-made object which we need for the settings of this gallery. So now we are nearly ready to build up the gallery, and just let's check settings, and so log, and I want to check the settings, or let's name it settings. It is, as they are more than one parameter. Just reload, and I'm switching over to the console and hitting an. So now we see an object we expect as it is in curly brackets, and the object looks like this. It is listed here with a parameter. When this comes to the container, it is really an HTML object, a jQuery object, and we have the dynamic element is the array, so it is really written as we have it created with the all images array here, and the other parameters show up here as well, so the settings object should be okay. And now we can really create the gallery, and this part is now pretty shorthand, and it is just making an instance of a gallery object. lightGallery provides an object, and you can create instances of it, so you are able to use more galleries than one on one page, and get an instance of a gallery object. So that's what's happening here. And this is a variable containing this object. I'm I'm saying inline gallery for it. So it's my choice. Inline gallery equals, and now this gallery, this is this general object's name of a lightGallery provided by the lightGallery JavaScript. And this object has two parameters, and both of them are already prepared. It is a gallery container and it is settings. So these parameters are necessary for the gallery object or the instance of the gallery object to get built. So this is one step, and I save it, and we will see nothing so far because the object is just a data object. It is invisible by nature. Now we need another step to make this gallery visible. Is we are calling it, this object, or this instance of the object, inline gallery, and this inline gallery has some own methods. And you see here is provided some special stuff which is connected to this gallery object by this script, and now we can choose one of them, and it is open gallery. And this makes the gallery really visible. It is a function, so we need some curved brackets here. And when this is finished, we will see it. So let's go with, hopefully it works. So let's click this. And here we are. We have a caption. We have some arrows. We can click through the images. We see the caption, and the images are a little bit too small, so we have some issues left, but basically it works. And here we have the Last Supper. You see some issues here. If we point to the next gallery, we have a crazy mixture of some images. So it is working, but it isn't perfect. So we need to clean up some issues now. But now you have seen the principle of working with such libraries in JavaScript. Usually they have some settings objects, you have some other objects, and then you create an instance from a genuine object provided by such libraries. And you call this instance, or you create this instance with transferring some data and some settings to this object, and now then you have an instance living up from now on, and this instance has own methods and functions you can call, open, close, for example, or change or something like that. And it differs from what the library is made for. And this is a pretty typical procedure. You work with libraries providing some features and functions for your purpose. And now let's try to fix the issue with the image container being not high enough. So if I click here and see some images, reload. Here we have these small images, and they should at least reach down up to here. And now let's check it. If I'm using the right mouse button to show where I am in the document object model, I'm going to inspect, and I see here it's an image object, and I'm scrolling a little bit up and try to find a box. The outer box we have here, it is a gallery container. And this gallery container is something I want to be bigger. This is a container which is wrapping this image, and now I need to have the gallery container, and I'm targeting this here. And now let's try what I can change here just by fiddling around with changing these elements CSS. And if I'm going here to the element and I'm entering here a new line, and I'm going to hide, and let's say I want to have 100%. Okay, this goes into the right direction. It is just a little bit too much here. So let's enter a little function to make it fitting independently of what the screen size is. And maybe you know in CSS there is a nice function. It is made of calc, and calc is a calculation routine where you can mix up a value like 100% and subtract or add some absolute values, let's say 50 pixels. So I will 100%, but I will have 50 subtracted. So this is 50 pixels here, and now I can fiddle around here with cursor up and down. You can have shift cursor. You can increment this by 10 pixels a step or single pixels, and I will try 20 pixels. And what I need to do now to make it really working is I'm copying this height calc 100% minus 20 pixels, go to my custom CSS and just add it in a second line. And now I need this gallery container, just copy it, copy, and add a hash in front of it. This is a container we have set up in the skin editor, and copy it. And this custom CSS is also loaded because it is living in the lib folder, and the lib folder is outputted by Pano2VR into the HTML output. And if I'm making now a reload with custom CSS, I don't get an automatic reload. I need to check it here, and nothing changes. So what we need here is, when it comes to CSS, I'm going to Pano2VR and I'm going to the output section here and really re-output it, and doing really a reload or a hard reload with Command Shift R. And now the new CSS really should be loaded, and that's what I want here. And here we have our images. So this is pretty okay for the moment. And here we see the container has already these values. It is not really perfect, so let's check it here. Let's 30 pixels. Maybe it's better. You can swipe this gallery as you see here. And I will switch off the debug box here now because I don't need it anymore. Debug and appearance, I don't need it here. So save the skin, and now we should see the gallery as we want to see it. Now it looks nice. And what we have here, if we open a second gallery and we have the old images staying here, this issue will be corrected in the next section. So this is how you can alter some styling issues if you have, or correct some styling issues if you are using such a library like lightGallery, and you just need to click on with the right mouse button on the element and fiddle around. Where is a point where I can change it, where it reacts to changes made live here in the developer box. It is a pretty straightforward way to correct elements from their display. For the issue with old images still showing up, if I open a new gallery, let's check it. This is one image here. You can move it around. There's no other in this gallery. And if I close it and go to the next, also a single image, then I have this one, and the next one is a second one. In fact, we have an old image lying in the background and two new images before. So something is messing around here. We can have a little check here in the console, and we can test some variables. So we have our all images array, and we can ask what is in there. It may be not valid. So here, reference error, all images is not defined. So we have it here, but it is only valid inside of this function and inside of the script. And this script is living inside of the skin JS. So it is in this case, sometimes it works, sometimes not. In this case, the all images is outside of the focus, so we cannot check it here. So let's think about how we can do it otherwise. And we have some other possibilities. So we have an object, a gallery, and we have an images object. So we can do two things. And we can make a new function. And let's say this function will has a name kill gallery. So I want to wipe the data and I want some cleanup before I open a new gallery. And what we need here is to clear up this all images array. So I copy it, and if I want to empty it, I don't want to delete it, I just want to empty it. So let's point an equal sign and just an empty square bracket. So all items of this array will be erased. And the next one is remove gallery from HTML. And this is the next one. This is pretty easy. If you have such a gallery container like we have it here in our skin editor, we have here a div which is empty. And the gallery is putting all its HTML and all the stuff we need to show up the gallery. It is just here in this point. And so we just need to clean up all HTML living exactly here. And this is pretty easy. You can just take here the gallery container as a jQuery object. So remove. And this jQuery object has a property is HTML. And inside of the curved brackets, you have it content. And if you add nothing, then this will be wiped out. So every HTML generated by the lightGallery and what we see when the lightGallery opens will be vanished here. So now I need to invoke it by the skin editor. And let's try it. So I'm going to the skin editor and I'm going to my close button. The close button sets the variable gallery show to false, so it disappears from the screen. And it sets the gallery content to nothing. It sets the title to nothing. And the same function block is attached to gallery tint. And can add it here now for the gallery show content title. Something is missing. So I need to copy this gallery show here and add this, put it on the top, and now I'm adding at the gallery close button first a mouse click, and the mouse click is calling a function, and this should be JavaScript kill gallery. So I copy it here, or I copy the whole function, JavaScript kill gallery. Okay. Okay. Copy it and add it to gallery tint as well. Paste. Can stand at the last position in the order here, in the actions order. And now let's try it, whether it works. So save it here. And if I'm now going to one gallery, and close it, going to the next, I can't see any other elements here. Or let's test it with several. 1, 2, 3, and so on. You can cycle through it. Now let's have a single image gallery, only one image visible. So the all images object is cleaned, and the gallery HTML is removed from the screen text box. So this issue is resolved now. Now, as the gallery is generally working, we only need to fix some minor issues here. If I open it and go through the gallery, you have the white caption here, which isn't working very nice when it comes to bright backgrounds in the images. So that's what we need to fix first. And there's a very simple trick to get this. The lightGallery produces a pretty complicated HTML structure, and it is pretty difficult to find all this stuff here. There's a simple trick to find this part where this caption is placed by the lightGallery, and just enter here the flood as the wording we have in this caption. This should be pretty unique, just we have it here. And here we have the element. Let's check it. This is a picture, and we have the div, and here stands the flood, and it is marked in our display here like that, what we want, and just make the marking permanent. You see this little icon at the right side of an element, so you can permanently mark it, and you can also test some tweakings live. So let's have the background color, and I want to make it a little bit darker but transparent. So I'm going with RGBA and enter some black. This is black, and now comma, and now I have some alpha. Now I need to unmark it to see what I want, and you see there's a black background, and if you put your cursor into the last number, you can hit the Alt key or Option key and just switch a little bit around, and it's a little bit too less. Let's stick with it. And now you have everything you want. You have a parameter, and you have a class where this parameter is to attach this rule. So head over to custom CSS and enter .lg. This stands for lightGallery sub HTML curly brackets, paste the CSS code from the development part in here. And now save it, and you now need, of course, wieder a real output from Pano2VR with the cogwheel to really put this changed CSS into the output. And now we can get a reload, and now this caption should be nicer than before. That's a pretty easy way to find some places where to tweak everything to your liking. So I think our image gallery project for Pano2VR is now at about 98 or 99%. One minor issue in my eyes, but I like to make it really good, is the following. If you have a gallery with several images, you can swipe around and loop left, right. And if you have a gallery with one image, you can also swipe, kind of a rubber band effect, and it doesn't make really sense. So I want to disable swiping or dragging when I have only one image. And this is a pretty good example how you can change settings of such an object construction now using with lightGallery afterwards, or when you prepare this gallery. And that is a great advantage of what we are doing here. We are setting up this gallery dynamically just on the spot when we need it. If we click on hotspot, then the gallery is generated, and we can configure it on the click, directly after the click, not before, or not static, but it's reacting to what we want. And so let's add some setting parameter here depending on how many images we have. After that, I make a little bit space here. It must happen after the settings object is already living and filled up, but before it is used here in the next line. So here we need some disable some condition for swiping and dragging switched on or off. Disable drag swipe for one image. As a condition, we now need some construction with if, curved brackets, and then curly brackets, and in the curved brackets we have a condition. The condition is pretty easy here. We have all images, and all images is an array, and an array has one property. It is dot length. Well, it is a count of elements. Length. And if this length is larger than 1, then swiping should be enabled. And now let's check for the parameter if it's available. And I'm heading over to the documentation of the library, and I don't want to scroll around here. There are very much. So let's check for swipe, for instance. I have tried it already. You see it here. Enable swipe support for touch devices. So enable swipe. And as we see the settings objects, if we want to add something here, you just need to write settings, and now you add a dot as it is a child of this object, and enable swipe. And this should be true if we have more than one image. So it's a first. And we have an else. This is a condition if we have only one image. Then we just copy it and we set this to false. So now let's check this. And as you see here in the documentation, we have also an enable drag. And this is what we see here when we are using it on the desktop. This is for mobile devices. So just copy this and replace this enable swipe by enable drag. Copy this line and replace true with false. And now this should work for mobile devices and for desktop. So let's check it. If I have more than one images, both of these features are enabled, and else for one image, these are disabled. And now one image galleries shouldn't be able to swipe. So that's a multi-image. So, and this should be a single image here, and nothing is moving here. This image here is just the genuine drag and drop function of the browser, nothing to do with the project here. So now it is really what I want from the feature catalog I desired for this gallery. And now we are really at the end of this tutorial, and thanks for listening and watching. And it is only one example how you can do such stuff with Pano2VR. There are a lot of other image galleries out there. I just selected this one for the lightGallery, for it's pretty easy to configure, and it has a lot of features, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. And the principles of data processing from Pano2VR skin variables to data structures you can use outside in a JavaScript and to do something with it. That was the main goal, to show how this basically works in JavaScript, to extend this feature and to make a pretty compact and easy to configure image gallery here. And to recap what we have here in our program itself, you need an empty text box here, you need some actions on the hotspot and on the closing elements, and you can get away with 3 variables here. And in the panoramas themselves, you only add a hotspot from this type, add some data to the description and a title, and you are free to use one or more images. and it's a pretty elegant combination. And if you want a new hotspot, just choose this template, enter some infos in hotspot title, hotspot description, and the image gallery related to this hotspot will generate automatically. So you only have one library to do this, and everything else comes from the hotspots themselves. So there is a pretty flexible workflow and process here. And of course, you can change a lot of features if you are using a powerful library like lightGallery, and you see that you can tweak all this pretty easy with CSS. And I showed a little bit how to find the places where visual issues are occurring and what you can do with this. So I hope it is a pretty useful example how to do stuff like this. And yeah, thanks for watching.